I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, sharing my story. My name is Jake, and I've been married to my wife, Rachel, for 6 years. We had what I thought was a happy marriage. At least that's what I kept telling myself while we went about our day-to-day lives. Rachel was beautiful, smart, and had a way of lighting up the room. But over the last few months, things had started to shift. At first, I chalked it up to her being busy with work. She's a marketing manager at a fast-paced tech company, and I figured the stress was getting to her. But I noticed little changes. Rachel was more distracted than usual, and her phone became a fortress. She'd receive texts and quickly shuffle away to answer them, her eyes darting around as if she was expecting someone to catch her. I'd ask if everything was okay, and she'd shoot me a look, almost annoyed, saying she was just dealing with deadlines and office drama. Then there were the late nights. I'd come home from my job as a graphic designer to find the house dark and silent. When I asked her about it, she'd brush it off, telling me she was just out with the girls or had to stay late at work for a last-minute meeting. I wanted to trust her, I really did, but that nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't let me rest. I started Googling signs of cheating, trying to validate my suspicions, and it only fueled my paranoia. One night, I was working late and decided to do a little digging. I found her laptop open on our kitchen table, and without thinking, I checked her messages. What I saw sent a chill through my entire being. There were flirty texts, heart emojis, and conversations that went late into the night with someone named Mike. My heart raced as I read the words. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." I felt like the ground had fallen out from under me. My mind was racing and I couldn't breathe. The betrayal hit harder than any punch I could have imagined. I closed the laptop and sat there in silence, trying to process what I had just learned. My wife, the woman I trusted more than anything, was cheating on me. For the next few days, I was a ghost in my own home. I didn't know how to act, so I decided to play the part of the oblivious husband. We had dinner as usual, and I let her ramble on about work, all the while I was boiling inside. Rachel never suspected a thing. She was still using her silence to manipulate me, keeping me guessing while I was stuck in my own hell. Then came the day of reckoning. I couldn't take it anymore. The anger and betrayal had built up into a storm inside me. I confronted Rachel after she returned from what she claimed was a dinner with her coworkers. I slammed the laptop on the table, my heart pounding, and demanded to know who Mike was and what was going on. You wouldn't believe her reaction. She laughed, a cold, condescending laugh that sent chills down my spine. "Jake, you're imagining things. That's just work stuff. You know how it is." But I pushed her harder, refusing to let her lie wash over me. The more I pressed, the more defensive she became, her face twisting into a mixture of anger and denial. I could see the facade cracking, and it felt good, but it also hurt like hell. She began to throw accusations at me, claiming I was paranoid and insecure. It was sickening how she turned it around, but deep down I sensed her guilt. Rachel kept digging for excuses, but the more she spoke, the more her words felt empty. As I stood there, listening to the lies pour out of her mouth, I realized I had to channel the pain into something else. I had to stop being the victim. In that moment, I decided I wouldn't let her silence control me. I would use my own silence as a weapon. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I was determined to figure it out. I felt a cold rage boiling inside me, and I knew I had to plan my revenge carefully. This was just the beginning, and I was done being passive. I would make Rachel feel the weight of her betrayal, but I needed time to think. After the confrontation, things between Rachel and me reached a new and painfully awkward level. I could feel the tension in the air like a thick fog. But I had decided to play the game differently. I wouldn't engage her in the same way I had before. Instead, I would go silent. I stopped initiating conversation. I stopped asking her about her day, about work, about anything. I focused on my own life, diving headfirst into my graphic design projects, spending more time at the gym and reconnecting with old friends. My silence was my way of taking control. I wanted Rachel to feel the weight of my absence, to experience the same isolation I felt when I discovered her betrayal. At first, Rachel didn't seem to notice. She continued her routine, throwing herself into her work and social life. But as days turned into weeks, her demeanor changed. I could see her trying to reach out, attempting to fill the silence with conversation, but I remained stoic. I gave her short, clipped responses, barely acknowledging her attempts. One night after yet another lackluster dinner, Rachel snapped. "What's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this?" she asked, frustration lacing her voice. I looked at her, my expression blank, and simply replied, "I'm fine." The air between us crackled with tension, and for the first time, I saw the flicker of concern in her eyes. I later learned that she had started spending more time with her friends, trying to escape the uncomfortable atmosphere at home. I played the role of the distant husband, and it was strangely satisfying to see her anxiety grow. I wanted her to feel the uncertainty that had plagued me for weeks. Then came the night that changed everything. I was at a local bar with a couple of friends, trying to unwind. I saw Rachel walk in with a group of her colleagues, Mike included. My heart sank when I noticed her laughter ringing out, carefree and unbothered, as she leaned in close to him. I felt something dark and heavy surge within me. I couldn't just sit by and watch her parade around with the man who had stolen our love. I made my way over, my stomach churning with a mix of anger and determination. As I approached, I could hear her say something suggestive to Mike, and that was the final straw. I stepped forward, clearing my throat loudly to get their attention. When Rachel turned and saw me, her face went pale, and I felt a twisted satisfaction in that moment. "Jake, what are you doing here?" she stammered, the surprise etched across her features. "I could ask you the same question," I replied, my voice low and steady. The group fell silent, and I could sense the tension rising. Rachel laughed nervously, trying to regain control of the situation. "Oh, we were just what? Having fun, because that's what you've been doing, right? Having fun with Mike." My voice cut through the air, raw and unfiltered. I didn't care who heard me, I wanted her to squirm. "Jake, this isn't what it looks like," she said, her eyes darting to Mike, who was now looking uneasy. "Then what is it, Rachel? Enlighten me," I shot back, feeling the weight of her lies crashing down around us. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, she turned to Mike, her expression pleading for help. "Can you give us a moment?" she asked, and he stepped away, leaving us to face each other. "What do you want from me, Jake?" Her voice was laced with a mix of annoyance and fear. "I want you to be honest for once. I want you to tell me what's really going on," I demanded, my heart thumping in my chest. She hesitated, and for a brief moment I thought I might see the truth behind her carefully constructed persona. "I didn't mean for it to happen, it just did," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It was all I needed to hear. The admission hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken words. I felt a mixture of anger and sympathy. How could she be so reckless, yet still attempt to play the victim? "Then maybe you should think about what you really want," I said coldly, turning on my heel and walking out of the bar, leaving her standing there speechless. Walking home, I felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through me. It was one thing to confront her, but now I had tangible proof of her betrayal. I realized I had crossed a line into a new phase of my plan. I could no longer live in the silent shadows. Now I would haunt her, just as she had haunted me with her deceit. Rachel's facade was beginning to crack, and I had all the ammunition I needed. I would make her understand the consequences of her actions, one painful moment at a time. When I got home that night, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and anger still churning within me. Rachel hadn't expected me to confront her, especially in front of her colleagues. I knew she was shaken, and that was precisely the point. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I plotted my next moves. I had to be strategic about this. Revenge isn't just about anger, it's about making a statement. The following days were a blur of simmering tension and calculated silence. Rachel had tried to reach out to me, asking if we could talk, but I maintained my distance. I recalled our conversations, our shared dreams, and the laughter that once filled our home. Now it felt like a ghost town, haunted by lies and regrets. I was determined that Rachel should feel the sting of her betrayal, and I wanted to make it last. I began by subtly altering our daily routines. I started spending more time out of the house, going to the gym, grabbing drinks with friends, or even working late. The more time I spent outside, the more I could sense Rachel's growing unease. She'd ask, "Where have you been?" with an edge in her voice, but I'd just give her vague answers and move on. Her frustration was palpable and it fueled my resolve. I wanted her to think about what she'd lost, but I didn't stop there. I began to flirt with the idea of social media. I hadn't been active on Facebook or Instagram for a while, but I decided to start posting pictures, checking in at various bars and restaurants and tagging friends. Each post showed me enjoying life, surrounded by people, and celebrating every moment I could. I could almost feel Rachel's eyes on me, watching from the sidelines, and it was exhilarating. One night, I posted a photo of a group of friends at a bar, laughing and holding drinks. I could almost hear the gears in Rachel's mind turning as she scrolled through her feed. I knew she'd be thinking, "What is he doing? Who's he with?" It was exactly the reaction I was aiming for. I wanted her to feel the same anxiety she had caused me. As the days turned into weeks, the silence between us became suffocating. I would come home to find her sitting on the couch, engrossed in her phone, and I'd make it a point to ignore her. I could see the cracks in her carefully painted facade. She was becoming more desperate for my attention and trying to engage me in conversation, but I stayed steadfast in my silence. It was almost comical watching her try to figure me out. Then came the night that would change everything, the breaking point for Rachel. I had made plans to go out with some friends again, and as expected, she started her usual routine of trying to persuade me to stay home. "Can't you just skip tonight? We could watch a movie or something," she suggested, her tone almost pleading. I shook my head. "I have plans, Rachel. I'll be home late." She huffed, crossing her arms as I walked toward the door. "You're always out. I don't even know what's going on with you anymore." I turned around, facing her. "Maybe you should think about what you've done." Her eyes widened, and I could see the realization hit her. She knew I was referring to her affair. But that night I had a different plan in mind. I texted a friend who knew about my situation and asked him to join me at the bar with some of his friends. I needed to crank up the pressure on Rachel. I wanted her to see me moving on, having a good time without her. As I entered the bar, I felt exhilarated. I greeted friends, laughed, and enjoyed every moment of the night. I made sure to post pictures, tagging my friend and posting a story of us having a great time. I could only imagine Rachel's reaction when she saw it. I wanted her to feel the walls closing in, that she was losing me for good. When I finally came home, it was late and the house was dark. I opened the door to find Rachel waiting up for me, her eyes wide and worried. "You're late," she said, her voice tinged with both relief and annoyance. "Yeah, I lost track of time," I replied nonchalantly. My indifference stung her deeply. "What were you doing?" she pressed, her frustration bubbling over. "You can't just keep disappearing like this." I took a breath, letting the silence linger. Finally, I looked at her, a small smile creeping onto my face. "I was having fun, Rachel. Something you might want to consider doing yourself." That statement hung in the air like a heavy fog. I had never seen her look so defeated. It was as if I had pulled the rug from under her and she stumbled back, struggling to hold her ground. Rachel began to realize that I was not going to let her manipulate the situation anymore. My silence was a wall she couldn't breach. I could see her mind racing, trying to calculate her next move, but I remained an enigma, something she couldn't grasp. I would continue to haunt her with my indifference, my newfound freedom. I wanted her to understand that I was moving on, even if she hadn't completely grasped the weight of her choices yet. And as I lay in bed that night, satisfied with my plan, I felt a sense of power returning to me. This was just the beginning of my journey toward reclaiming my life from the shadows of her betrayal. The next few weeks unfolded like a well-scripted drama. Rachel's reactions to my calculated indifference were becoming increasingly desperate. It was almost as if she were a puppet, struggling to break free from the strings of her own making. I could see the toll it was taking on her, and honestly, it felt good, liberating in a way I never expected. My social media posts became more frequent, showcasing me with friends, enjoying life, and seemingly thriving without her. I even started going out on dates with other women. Nothing serious, just casual meetups to remind myself I wasn't defined by my relationship with Rachel. Each time I returned home, I could see her watching me, her eyes filled with a mix of confusion and jealousy. It was intoxicating to know I had the power to evoke those emotions in her. One evening, I arranged to meet a woman named Claire, who I had matched with on a dating app. She was fun, witty, and a refreshing change from the heaviness that characterized my life with Rachel. We decided to grab drinks at a trendy bar downtown. I made sure to post a picture of us laughing, glasses raised in a toast, complete with a caption that hinted at a budding connection. When I got home that night, I anticipated the storm that would follow. Sure enough, Rachel was up waiting for me, her arms crossed and her expression a mix of anger and hurt. "You went on a date?" she asked, her voice low and trembling with disbelief. "What's it to you?" I replied casually, not giving her the satisfaction of knowing how much her words stung. She scoffed, incredulous. "You can't just move on like that. You're not even over what happened." I shrugged, trying to appear unfazed. "I'm just having some fun, Rachel, something you might want to try yourself." Her expression shifted from anger to desperation. "You don't mean that, you're just trying to hurt me." I stepped closer, my voice steady. "No, Rachel, I'm just showing you what it's like to be on the other side of this. You wanted your freedom, remember? Well, now I'm taking mine." I could see the tears well in her eyes, the facade of confidence she had tried to maintain crumbling before me. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by the satisfaction of seeing her. Discomfort. She had used silence and manipulation to control me for too long. Now it was my turn. Rachel tried to regain her composure, wiping her eyes and putting on a brave face. "You think this is going to make me want to come back to you? You think I'll just sit here and watch you date someone else?" "It's not about that anymore," I said, my voice calm yet firm. "It's about you facing the consequences of your actions. You wanted excitement and fun. Well, now you have to deal with the reality of what you did." With that, I walked away, leaving her standing there speechless. I had anticipated the guilt and sorrow she might feel, but I also knew that this was part of the process. She needed to understand the depths of her betrayal, and I would help her get there, whether she wanted to or not. Over the following weeks, Rachel attempted to regain control in various ways. She would cook elaborate dinners, trying to recreate the romance we once had, but it felt forced and hollow. I acknowledged her efforts yet remained unresponsive, opting to eat out more often or grab takeout, just to avoid the awkwardness of sitting across from her at the dinner table. I could see the toll it was taking on her. She was becoming a shell of the confident woman I once knew. Her laughter was gone, replaced with a constant frown that deepened every day. I didn't revel in her sadness. Instead, I saw it as a necessary step toward understanding her mistakes. One evening, I returned home later than usual after having drinks with friends. As I walked through the door, I found Rachel sitting in the dark living room, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this anymore, Jake," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I've messed up and I don't know how to fix it." I paused, heart racing at the unexpected vulnerability. For the first time, I saw a glimpse of the remorse I had been waiting for. "What do you mean?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I miss you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I miss us. I miss who we were before everything." I felt a mixture of sympathy and anger bubble within me. "But you were the one who chose to betray me, Rachel. You can't expect me to just forget that." "I know," she said, her eyes pleading. "I made a terrible mistake. I put my own needs before ours, and I didn't think about how it would affect you. I just wanted to feel alive again, but I see now how wrong I was." I took a breath, weighing her words. I wanted to believe her, but the scars of betrayal were still fresh. "You can say that, but it doesn't change what happened. I'm not just going to forget this overnight." She nodded, a defeated look on her face. "I understand. Just give me a chance to show you I can change. I'll do whatever it takes." I stayed silent for a moment, letting her words sink in. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to let this be a turning point, but I had to be cautious. The silence I had wielded as a weapon was now her plea for redemption, and suddenly I found myself at a crossroads. Would I allow Rachel back into my heart, or would I continue to haunt her with the ghosts of our past? I needed time. to think, to process. The decision weighed heavily on my mind as I went to bed that night, unsure of what the future would hold. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a whirlwind of emotions swirling within me. Rachel had finally cracked, exposing a vulnerability I had longed to see. It was a breakthrough, but the question lingered. Could I trust her again? The betrayal still felt fresh, raw, and I was acutely aware of the pain it had caused me. Over the next few days, Rachel tried to mend the pieces of our broken relationship. She began to reach out in ways I hadn't seen before. She brought home flowers, attempted to recreate our favorite meals, and even suggested couples therapy. I could see the effort she was putting in, but it was hard to ignore the nagging doubt inside me. Part of me wanted to embrace the hope of reconciliation, but another part of me warned against it. I couldn't help but recall the hollow apologies and the countless excuses she had made during our previous conversations. I had been the silent victim for too long, and I wasn't ready to dive back into what felt like a false sense of security. One evening I sat her down to talk. We chose the living room, a neutral ground devoid of any romantic illusions. "Rachel," I started, my voice steady but cautious, "I appreciate your efforts to change, but I need to know if you're truly committed to fixing this. I can't go back to the way things were without knowing you're serious." She looked at me, her expression earnest. "I swear, Jake, I messed up, and I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I can be better. I want us back." "Wanting it and actually doing it are two different things," I replied, feeling the weight of my own words. "It's going to take more than just a few gestures to make me believe you're not going to hurt me again." Rachel nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I understand. I'm willing to put in the work. I'll be transparent, no more secrets, no more games, just honesty between us." Her words struck a chord, and for the first time I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this time could be different. Maybe with effort we could rebuild what had been broken, but I needed to see it for myself. "I need time," I told her. "Let's take it slow. We can start with therapy and see where it leads." "Thank you," she whispered, relief washing over her. "I'll do everything I can to make this right." We began attending therapy sessions together, which was an uncomfortable yet necessary step toward healing. At first, the sessions felt like walking on eggshells. Rachel would share her feelings, often breaking down in tears, while I remained guarded. I felt a wave of conflicting emotions, frustration, anger, and a tinge of hope. The therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Lee, guided us through the tumultuous sea of our emotions. "It's important to communicate openly," she said during one session. "Both of you have experienced hurt, and it's crucial to express those feelings without fear of judgment." I would listen as Rachel recounted the reasons behind her infidelity, the pressures of life, the desire for validation, a sense of emptiness. I could see her vulnerability, and while it stirred empathy within me, I was still cautious. I remained silent, absorbing her words, letting them settle in my heart and mind. Gradually, Rachel began to understand the depth of the pain she had caused. The guilt that clouded her expression during those sessions felt genuine. There were moments when I could almost see the walls she had built around her heart beginning to crumble. But still, I wasn't ready to fully let my guard down. As time passed, I found myself retreating to my artistic side again. I began creating, pouring my feelings into my work. I started an art project that reflected my struggle with trust, betrayal, and ultimately, the journey of healing. I spent hours in front of my canvas, letting the colors swirl and blend in ways that mirrored my emotional turmoil. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, I came home to find Rachel sitting in front of my easel, looking at the unfinished painting. "Jake, this is beautiful," she said softly. I looked at her, surprised. "It's not finished," I replied, feeling exposed. "It's a work in progress just like us." She nodded, her eyes welling with tears. "I just want you to know that I'm committed to this, to us. I want to be part of the healing process, however long it takes." I studied her for a moment, weighing her intentions. "I appreciate that, Rachel, but I need to see that commitment reflected in your actions, not just your words." The following weeks felt like a delicate dance, the push and pull of healing intertwined with memories of betrayal. On one hand, I started to see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, but on the other hand, I was still haunted by doubts. I would catch Rachel staring at me, her expression a mix of hope and fear. It was as if she was waiting for me to fully embrace her once again, but I couldn't rush that process. I had to protect my heart, even if it meant facing difficult conversations and uncomfortable moments. In those quiet moments, I found myself reflecting on the lessons I had learned. I had discovered my own strength, the importance of self-awareness and the value of honesty, not just with her, but with myself. The betrayal had been a painful chapter, but it didn't have to define who I was or who we could become together. I felt a sense of determination wash over me. This was my journey as much as it was hers, and I was prepared to navigate the complexities of love and trust. Whether it would lead to reconciliation or closure, I knew it would ultimately shape the story of my life. But as I stared at my painting, I realized one thing: the final strokes had yet to be added. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself on a path of cautious optimism. Rachel and I continued our therapy sessions, and slowly but surely, we began to peel back the layers of our relationship. There were still moments of tension and reminders of the past, but we were both committed to facing those challenges head-on. One evening, after a particularly productive therapy session, we decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. As we strolled, we talked about our hopes for the future, the dreams we had put on hold, and what it would take to rebuild our trust. "I want to make new memories with you," Rachel said, her voice soft but filled with determination. "I know it's going to take time, but I'm willing to work for it. I want us to be stronger than we were before. I realize how much I took for granted." I nodded, reflecting on those words. "I want that too, but trust is something that needs to be earned back. It's going to be a process." "I'm ready," she insisted, her eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my heart race. "I think we can truly heal, Jake. I see a future for us where we can be happy again." In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Could we really find our way back to each other? Or was I being naive, thinking everything could just fall back into place? I took a deep breath, letting the cool evening air fill my lungs. "Then let's take it one step at a time." As the weeks went by, we began to establish new routines. We started going on weekend hikes, exploring new restaurants, and rediscovering the joy of being together. I took comfort in the little things: the way she would laugh at my jokes, the softness of her hand in mine, and the warmth in her smile. It was as if we were learning to date all over again, and it felt refreshing. But even amid the budding hope, there were still moments when doubt crept in. I would occasionally catch myself holding back, unsure of how much I could truly invest without risking another heartbreak. Rachel, too, had her moments of vulnerability, where she would doubt whether I was fully committed to moving forward. During one of those moments, we were sitting together on the couch, a movie playing in the background, when Rachel turned to me, her expression serious. "Do you think we're really going to be okay?" I paused, searching for the right words. "I believe we have the potential to be okay, but it's going to take time and effort from both of us. I want to trust you, but I need to feel that you're in this for the long haul." "I am," she said, her voice earnest. "I've learned so much about myself through this. I never want to hurt you like that again." Her sincerity struck a chord within me. I realized that while the scars of betrayal might always linger, they could also serve as reminders of how far we had come. We were both imperfect, navigating our own paths toward healing, and perhaps that was part of what made our relationship stronger. One Saturday morning, as we sat together with coffee in hand, I decided it was time to take a leap of faith. "Rachel, I think we should plan a trip together, just the two of us. Somewhere we can reconnect without the distractions of daily life." Her eyes lit up, and for a brief moment I was reminded of the excitement we used to share. "That sounds amazing. Where do you want to go?" I smiled, feeling the warmth of possibility. "How about a cabin in the woods? A chance to unplug and focus on us." "Let's do it," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. As we began planning our getaway, I could see the light returning to Rachel's eyes. It felt exhilarating to navigate this new chapter together, one where we both understood the importance of honesty and communication. The day of our trip arrived, and as we drove away from the city, I felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. We arrived at the cabin, nestled in a picturesque forest surrounded by towering trees and the sounds of nature. It felt serene and calming, a stark contrast to the chaos of our past. That night we sat outside by the fire, the stars twinkling above us. The warmth of the flames matched the warmth building between us. We talked for hours, sharing our dreams, our fears, and the things we cherished about one another. "Jake," Rachel said, her voice soft amidst the crackling of the fire, "I want you to know that I'm grateful for this chance. I know I messed up, but I'm committed to making things right. I just hope you can forgive me one day." I looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "Rachel, forgiveness isn't something that happens overnight. It's a journey much like what we're on now. But I want to try. I want to believe in us again." As we spoke under the stars, I felt a sense of hope unfurl within me. Maybe we could create a new story, a story of rebuilding, rediscovery, and resilience. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I knew we were both willing to navigate it together. In that quiet moment, as I held her hand and looked into her eyes, I realized that while my heart had been shattered, it was also capable of healing. Rachel and I were embarking on a new chapter, and this time we would write it together, with honesty, love, and the understanding that we were stronger than the pain of our past.